Welcome to UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York. Join us as we delve into the world's most pressing issues and learn how the people inside work toward a better future for everyone around the world.
Coming up on UN Insider.
UNRWA may not survive without our immediate and decisive action.
With the crisis in Gaza marking 5 months, there is a growing concern over the fate of the UN agency tasked with helping civilians.
The violence that people are exposed to is inhuman. It cannot continue like this.
As Haiti descends further into chaos, the UN pleads for more funding and action on a Kenyan-led security mission. And the fight to protect animals from poaching as the UN marks World Wildlife Day. Next.
It has been 5 months since Hamas launched brutal attacks on Israel that led to a bloody conflict and a humanitarian crisis. A crisis diplomats here at the UN are still working to resolve.
An immediate ceasefire in Gaza is the overwhelming call of the international community and a long overdue decision that should have been made by the Security Council. However, due to the constant obstruction of one permanent member, the Council still hasn't taken any action on this. We call upon the relevant country to adopt a just and responsible attitude and stop continuing to be on the opposite side of the international community.
Shudaja is monitoring developments inside the halls of the UN. Deja.
Yes, Elaine. Oof, what a busy week here in the United Nations. We have Security Council meetings on Afghanistan, on Syria chemical weapon report, on Sudan and South Sudan, on Haiti, but still, Gaza situation dominated the agenda, from General Assembly to Security Council. But let me give you one day to demonstrate how packed this week was. I call it Crazy Monday. On Monday, we had 2 General Assembly sessions on Gaza, one about U.S. veto of Algerian draft resolution to call for a ceasefire in Security Council, another one about the situation of UNRWA, UN Relief Agency for Palestinian Refugees. As reporters, we also have not 1 but 3 briefings, including one from Pramila Patten, Special Representative of the Secretary General on Sexual Violence in Conflict, releasing its report about the sexual violence in Hamas' October 7th attack, and the one from Philippe Lazzarini about UNRWA and its mandate. When talking about the veto again, U.S. Deputy Ambassador Robert Wood urged member states to support its new draft resolution.
To support these sensitive negotiations, we have circulated a draft Security Council resolution that calls for a temporary ceasefire together with the release of all hostages as soon as possible. We have appreciated the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues in the Council on this text and hope that it can be adopted.
Well, in the draft resolution, we see the text of 6-week ceasefire, which many believe is in parallel to the ongoing negotiation between Israeli government and Hamas. Once deal reached, the draft will be put to a vote. However, the Israeli ambassador Erdan continued his criticism on the UN because of UN's silence on sexual violence by Hamas.
You will finally understand that the UN has become a collaborator with rapists and perverts. If the UN's deafening silence continues despite the findings in the report, this will definitely be the last nail in the UN's coffin. It will lose any remaining legitimacy.
And then he was recalled by Israeli government because of the same reason. Interestingly, here is how the spokesperson of the Secretary General replied. Israel recalls its UN ambassador because of what they call the UN silence on Hamas sexual violence. Do you have any comment on this?
Frankly, I'm not sure I know how to answer that question. That announcement was accusing the Secretary General trying to bury a report was made literally an hour, 2 hours before a press conference presenting the report. And then in the afternoon, UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini
urged the member states not to abandon UNRWA. And he pointed out that so far, no further information is yet to be received by UNRWA about the October 7th attack accusation. And UNRWA is, quote, facing a deliberate and concerted campaign to undermine its operations and ultimately end them.
Let me stress what is at stake. If no meaningful action is taken to correct the disastrous course we are on. In the short term, the entire humanitarian response in Gaza will crumble. Implementing the International Court of Justice order and the resolution of the Security Council calling for increased humanitarian aid will become impossible.
Now we're closely watching whether there's going to be a ceasefire deal before Ramadan, and if so, how will the UN make a difference on humanitarian situation in Gaza? And that's all from me, Elaine.
Shudaja, thanks. A long-delayed security mission to Haiti could be closer to getting underway. Haiti's foreign minister and Kenya's president recently signed an agreement that could clear the way for a multinational force to deploy. Gangs now control large parts of the Caribbean nation. The UN signed off on a Kenya-led mission to help national police regain control. But the plan has faced legal challenges. Meanwhile, the violence and humanitarian issues grow worse by the day.
More or less 5.5 million Haitians are in need of humanitarian assistance. And that's quite significant if we consider that the country has between 10, 11, 12 million in terms of population. And we know that out of those, there are 4.4 million people and that's about 40% of the population that actually face acute food insecurity. And we also know that 45% of Haitians don't have access to clean drinking water.
The Secretary General reiterates the need for urgent action, particularly in providing financial support for the multinational security support mission to address the pressing security requirements of the Haitian people and prevent the country from plunging further into chaos.
China is one of the founding members of the United Nations. As a permanent member of the Security Council and a champion of sustainable development, the country plays a key role in the organization. Jody Jacobs takes a look at China's relationship with the UN.
I have great pleasure in welcoming His Excellency Han Zheng, Vice President of the People's Republic of China.
Its influence at the United Nations has been growing in the General Assembly and around the horseshoe table in the Security Council. In recent years, China too has become the second largest contributor to the UN's regular budget and the second largest funder for UN peacekeeping operations.
China's role has certainly evolved and it has certainly become much more proactive. And certainly if you look at among the P5, China has really started to step up in the peace and security, development pillars.
Over the years, China has also gained more influence over global development and might even hold more sway were it not for an entrenched monetary system established by the Western nations during World War II.
China feels that it is contributing more, but is still not having adequate amount of say in terms of of how the money is dispersed by these international financial institutions, the Bretton Woods ones. So I'm talking in particular about the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. In very specific way. And I think part of that has got to do with the politics of it. China's approach to development is broadly, if I might say so, apolitical, whereas the international financial institutions, particularly the Bretton Woods institutions, do follow a more Western liberal model of development.
No clearer was this message than at the United Nations General Debate in 2023. It's here that China told world leaders that it identifies with the goals and challenges of less developed nations and offered them an alternative to what it has long called Western homogeny.
China will remain a member of the big family of developing countries as the largest developing country. China is a natural member of the global south. It breathes the same breath as other developing countries and shares the same future with them. China is firm in upholding the legitimate rights and interests of developing countries. It supports and respects their efforts to independently decide on the development paths in keeping with their national conditions.
At the UN Security Council, China has also been flexing its muscle, urging the Council to uphold international peace and security. This comes as Russia and the US have been sparring over the conflict in Ukraine and Gaza. It's not just all talk. China remains the largest troop contributing country among the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council. Beijing believes that UN peacekeeping operations play a pivotal role in eliminating the root causes of conflict and ensuring lasting peace. Jody Jacob, CGTN, New York.
Coming up.
We are in an era of human migration without precedents at this moment.
UN Insider.
Introducing CGTN Now. Find award-winning documentaries and exclusive content from around the world. Latin America like you've never seen. Breakthrough films shining a light on important stories. In-depth discussions with fascinating people. Giving you new perspective on topics that matter. You also get live round-the-clock international news and headlines and so much more. Original content from CGTN's Global Bureau. Download the CGTN Now app and find the global perspective you've been missing. Available on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire, or go to cgtnnow.com on your tablet or mobile device. CGTN Now. See the difference.
There are an estimated 281 million international migrants around the globe. That's about 3.6% of the global population. The figure has risen sharply in recent decades. In 1990, there were an estimated 153 million international migrants. Conflict, climate change, and economic opportunity are some of the key factors driving the increase in migration. In Latin America and the Caribbean, there's growing concern about the well-being of child migrants. Michelle Begay explains.
Record numbers of children are migrating through Latin America and the Caribbean, according to a report published in 2023 by the United Nations Children's Fund. 1 in 4 migrants in the region is a child. Officials say the children are fleeing gang violence, poverty, and climate-related events. The UN says more young children are on the move, often alone. Last December in Colombia, 2 African children, aged 10 and 14, were abandoned in Bogotá's international airport. They were traveling in separate groups and were left by relatives for reasons not clarified.
Sometimes when a child is alone and not accompanied, it's because of an economic situation. The parent will take the cheaper route on foot, but pay for their child to get on a boat or on a plane and will sacrifice themselves through another route.
According to Colombian officials, both children were on transit flights bound for El Salvador. They were taken by Colombia's Family Welfare Institute to begin the process of contacting their families abroad. Migrants from different continents are increasingly using South America and Central America as stepping stones on the long route to North America. They are searching for better economic opportunities for themselves and their families. While some can pass through Colombia on expensive flights, many are going by foot through the dangerous jungle in Colombia's border with Panama, known as the Darien Gap.
Through the Darien Gap last year, we saw 450,000 migrants, of which 50,000 were children and adolescents from 114 different nationalities. 95% of them are Venezuelan, but we're seeing an increase in other nationalities.
After the incident in El Dorado Airport involving the two children, Colombian authorities announced they would implement more migration controls for minors to prevent it from happening again. Observers say more must be done to prevent transit migration and integrate migrants in the countries where they may be stuck. Besides the physical risks, children face violence, exploitation, and abuse.
We are in an era of human migration without precedents at this moment. There are more than 18 million people who are migrating. That is as much as a country like Ecuador or Guatemala. It's as big as the population of a city like New York. So there has to be a collective response. It cannot be the job of just one country.
Michelle Bege, CGTN, Bogotá, Colombia.
The UN is working to end tropical disease epidemics by 2030, but climate change and other factors have led to a spike in cases. In South America, dengue fever outbreaks are posing a challenge. Lucrecia Franco shows us how healthcare officials in Brazil are fighting back.
It is an uphill battle in an ongoing war against a deadly mosquito, the vector for an unprecedented dengue epidemic in Brazil. But spraying alone is not enough, say health authorities, who launched a cross-country blitz to urge people to do their part in the fight by eliminating standing water where mosquitoes can breed.
Every person has to spend 10 minutes each week to prevent the neighborhood, prevent their own home from the mosquitoes increase. So it's very important to keep aware all the week, 10 minutes each week.
Since the beginning of the year, Rio de Janeiro and 6 other states have declared states of emergency, as never before seen numbers of people have fallen ill and more than 200 have died.
The worst is the body pain and fatigue. You don't feel like getting up, doing anything, or even eating. My platelet count went down to 76. It's very scary.
11 field hospitals have been opened in Rio de Janeiro alone to treat patients, and the city is involved in the world's first public dengue vaccination campaign, limited for now to 10 and 11-year-old children.
I know that the dengue mosquito is dangerous and can even kill, so it's important that we get vaccinated to avoid any risk of anything happening.
And while the Japanese-manufactured Q-dengue vaccine is an important tool, production bottlenecks left a mere 5.2 million doses for Brazil to purchase. Another 9 million will be delivered in 2025. More than 1 million cases of dengue have been confirmed in Brazil, and scientists warn if no significant action is taken by the public, that number could explode to over 4 million by the end of the year. Apart from the preventive 2-dose vaccine, no effective treatments are available for patients once they contract the dengue virus. So the best way to avoid future disease outbreaks remains battling mosquitoes on the ground. Lucrecia Franco, CGTN, Rio de Janeiro.
Coming up.
It's a personal attack on our heritage. So all wildlife crimes, in our view, need to be taken seriously.
UN Insider.
Each day, there are millions of stories. Each one can open new perspectives, new possibilities. Wherever you look, we are there to see, discover, explore. We put the pieces together to find what really matters to you, all around the world, all around the clock. Our reporters are at home across the globe. From our headquarters in Beijing and production centers in Washington, Nairobi, and London, China Global Television Network. Stories from across the globe, reaching people across the globe. CGTN. See the difference.
Sunday marked World Wildlife Day. This year's theme, Connecting People and Planet, exploring digital innovation in wildlife conservation. Around the world, people are working to protect species and the habitats they call home.
A total of 499 rhinos were poached here in South Africa in 2023, with the province of KwaZulu-Natal accounting for over 60% of rhino poaching incidents in the last year. According to the Environmental Affairs Department, this number amounts to 51 more rhinos poached than in 2022, despite efforts to protect the animals.
It is to be said that even as you have seen the number that is around 350, which is really disheartening at the rate that we're seeing poaching, we also have had a number of arrests.
South African law enforcement agencies report that they arrested a total of 49 suspected poachers in KwaZulu-Natal province in 2023, while a total of 45 poachers and horn traffickers were convicted. But organized crime syndicates are still making it hard for law enforcement to curb the scourge of rhino poaching.
Rhino poaching is a prime example of what we call transnational organized crime or transnational wildlife crime. And I think people need to understand how complex it is responding to transnational organized crime and understand the different levels and role players that operate within criminal syndicates.
A university professor with a background in radiation protection and nuclear security says the government must consider using new technologies to stop rhino poaching.
Government should be moving beyond the guns, guards and gates that they currently use and look to use other technological solutions such as the Rhizotope project, which uses nuclear techniques to devalue the animals, to make it harder to smuggle these goods out of the country and make them smuggle across the world. We need to be finding other technological solutions to be able to assist these people to continue to protect these animals, because they are our heritage.
Currently, South Africa is home to nearly half of the critically endangered black rhino population on the African continent and to the world's largest population of near-threatened white rhinos. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Cleaning up plastic pollution is one of the world's biggest challenges. The material has a wide variety of uses, but it clogs landfills and waterways and can impact species from animals to humans. Silkina Alawalia shows us how a new center in Indonesia is trying to make a difference.
As the challenge of plastic waste deepens globally, one initiative stands at the forefront of change. Prevented Ocean Plastic Southeast Asia, or POPSI, aims to stop plastic pollution directly at its source.
Especially about Indonesia, because we are archipelagic countries where if these materials is not being collected, it potentially will goes to waterways and then end up in the oceans. That's what we prevented.
This center in North Jakarta has the capacity to process more than 80 tons of plastic waste per month. Their goal is to set the highest standard in recycling across Southeast Asia. They're on a mission to build a better recycling system, one that helps the environment and the economy.
This is how I love about the business itself, because here we actually can employing mostly those people who has no high education backgrounds, then we can train them, give them certain skill to sort materials, to recognize every different materials, and then we can hire them with above minimum wage.
This way, POPSI is creating local communities that's always learning, growing, and committed to make a difference. This center in North Jakarta is just the beginning. POPSI plans to open 25 more centers in coastal regions by 2025. And their ultimate aim is to process over 68,000 tons of plastic each year. To date, POPSI has kept almost 2 billion bottles from polluting the oceans. They've done this by teaming up with global companies.
There is a big gap between governments and communities. The most important thing right now is to change the public's behavior. There is also a gap in infrastructure, so having initiatives like this is certainly very helpful.
As POPSI continues to expand its infrastructure, it's laying the foundation for a circular economy where plastic pollution is not just managed, but prevented at its source. And every step is crucial to create a cleaner and greener planet. Silkina Aluwalia, CGTN, Jakarta.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN insider.